Here on page 97, we mentioned last week we were talking about distinctions between milk and meat, and if you're eating milk and meat on the same table, what you need to have on the table. And I think we left off with tablecloths, and that is despite the fact that you from a halachic perspective, you think that according to Jewish law, you don't really need tablecloths. What does it really matter? But actually, believe it or not, the Fri Jul who mentions in the names of Rabbi that you really that although he says that you only need to separate different placemats or tablecloths when the food is put directly onto the placemat, breathing off a plate, doesn't really matter. That might be what they say. However, the standard halachic practice is what's mentioned there in the bowl about Minchas Yaakov, the name of the Bach, that when one eats from a plate, it is preferable to use separate placemats. And that is definitely the prevailing custom. I think I even perhaps made reference to it last week. I think in our house, the pink ones are FINiSHED, the blue ones are milchik. That's generally what we do. You could, though, really, if you really think about it, if you kind of use the table for dairy, and then you just use a placemat for meat, that would also be okay to do. What happens if you have a tablecloth that's totally clean, and you generally use it for meat? Could you use it for milk? The answer is yeah. As long as it's clean, you could. We're not worried that you'll get confused and you'll see the white tablecloth and think that it's you're having a meat meal, and we're not concerned for such a thing. Generally speaking, though, we do have separate tablecloths and placemats and all of that, but really, you don't really need to. And the truth is, I don't hate to do this to women, but to talk about Pesach, it's not that far away. Really, you don't even need kosher Pesach tablecloths. If you just wash them in your laundry, that would actually be sufficient as well. Now, here's something which is quite practical, and the reason why it's quite practical is because it really happens a lot. And that is, let's say the following. Let's say I'm having a meal, and you can sit closer if you like, and I'm cutting bread with a knife. And the question is going to be, if I use a meat knife to cut the bread, believe it or not, we have to be worried about certain things in terms of status of even the bread, not just the knife itself. And let's take a look on page 98, the section entitled Cutting Bread. So here we go. You shouldn't use the same knife that was used to cut meat to cut bread, that one will be eaten with milk. Because what are we worried about? If I take a knife that I always use for meat for FINiSHED, and now I'm taking that knife and I'm cutting bread with it, it's possible that knife has residue, has some type of meat residue, and therefore, since I've cut bread with a knife that potentially has meat residue, to eat that bread with dairy, to eat that bread with milchik, might be in fact a problem. So how can we circumvent this problem? A few different things that you can do. Number one, I know some people joke about this. Like backyards, they put like spoons and forks and knives in the mud. Not really a source for that at all. This is maybe the source for what people talk about sticking, ever heard this before? Utensils in the mud in the backyard. The only thing that may be, we're on page 99 now at the top, the only thing maybe that it comes from is this. So, if I do, however, have a meat knife, and I take this meat knife, the Ramah says, if you take a look in the top-ish part on page 99, if I take this meat knife that I used, if I stab it in the ground, called Ne'itza Bekarka Yud Pamim, I stab it in the ground 10 times, where the earth is hard. Now, when they say earth is hard, I don't know if they don't mean frozen. So, in Toronto, this isn't that practical. For 3 months of the year, the earth isn't so hard, and for 4 months of the year, the earth is frozen, so you're left with a few months here where this potentially could be practical. If that is the case, you then would be allowed to take that knife and cut cheese with it. So again, I'm talking about a fleishik knife, right? we're worried that maybe there's some residue. If I stab it in the ground, says the Ramah, I stab in the ground 10 times. The idea here is that any type of meat residue would be removed because I'm stabbing it in the ground. I would be permitted to cut with it, says the Ramah, cheese. And again, the idea of you're taking the blade, there's a sense of pressure to it, and that pressure would remove at least the top layer from your knife to clean it off. Now, despite the fact that the Ramah says so, the Shach makes a very important qualification. It says you could only rely on this if you do not have any more knives. I do not know of a household, for sure a Jewish household, that has only one knife, right? What are those fancy Gakko's knives? What are those? Kakko knives? What's Gakko? Is that an insurance company or something in the States? Maybe? I don't know. Whatever. So whatever fancy knife you have, I have a feeling, I'd bet a lot of money on this, in fact, that you have access to other knives. So if, however, maybe you're on a camping trip, right? You go to the cottage, places that really practically this might happen. Oh my goodness, we only have one knife. It's not so crazy on a trip. You're going, let's say, on a vacation. They're going to start, you meant to bring more knives. You ended up only bring one knife. I think ideally, you try to bring more than one knife. But if you're really stuck and you really have only one knife, not so easy to get a knife. So here's where practically you could rely on it. The stabbing idea, and then of course you'd have to stab it again to revert this knife back to the meat status. Right? So again, you're stuck, practically speaking. You have only one knife. You could take this meat knife, stab in the ground 10 times, and then use it to cut cheese, and then once again 10 more times. I would recommend washing the knife afterwards, by the way. That's not necessarily for halakhic reasons, that's for cleanliness purposes. And then you'll be able to use it for dairy, for milchiks, once again. Okay? One thing that's interesting is if you are going to wash it, don't wash it in hot water. At least not originally, because if there's hot water and there is some residue on there, and it's a meat knife and there's residue of dairy, you don't want that to happen. So even after you stabbed it, just do a quick rinse in cold, make sure there's nothing there. Then if you want to use hot water, that would be okay. Now, according to the Taz, this is a bond of 99, if one wants to cut bread with a meat knife for a dairy meal, all you need to do is wipe the blade clean. In Hebrew, that's called kinuach. Stabbing, what's called ni'itza, is only if you want to switch back and forth between meat and milk. But bread is soft, as opposed to hard cheese. But bread is soft, and therefore we're not really worried about this notion of those things like bread residue remaining on a knife. It doesn't work that way with the cheese. That you could, you understand why there's some fatness to it, right? But when it comes to the bread, you'll have a bread crumb on a knife, but that's gonna come off very, very easily. So again, if you want to cut bread you want to cut bread at a milchik, at a dairy meal, and your only knife you have is a fleshik, is a meat knife, just clean the knife well, wash it off, and then you'd be allowed to wipe it off, and you'd be allowed to use it for the other type of meal. And again, you're traveling. Again, we shouldn't do this, but if we need to, we can. And the truth really is, just to clarify, if you turn the page, the Shach and Rabbi Akiva Eger also say that, you should also try to stab it in the ground, even if you're just cutting bread for a dairy meal and using a meat knife. Okay, so then he brings a proof there, the proof that is so from the law of stabbing for his reason for a non-kosher knife. All right, and I think that really is the halacha. We should really try. Again, if you're really, really stuck and you have no choice and you can't do the stabbing 10 times to cut the other gender for bread, you could rely on such a situation on the Taz, but generally speaking, you should have more than one knife, and if you're really stuck, you can do this nitza bakarka 10 times in the ground. Now today, I would say not only do we have a meat knife and a milk knife, but we have a pork knife. The concept of having a knife for a challah, and it's designated, this is a challah knife. I'm not going to use this to cut my chicken. I'm not going to use this to cut my cheese. We designate a knife. I'm sure we all have them. I'm sure we have many of them. And that really has become the minhag of the Jewish people, is to have a separate designated challah knife. Now this challah knife I could use on on Pesach. I mean, sorry, I use the challah knife on Pesach. I use the challah knife on Shabbos. I'm using it on Yom Tov. And when I have a dairy meal, I don't even want to use the word dairy meal on Shavuot. I don't want to say such a thing. But maybe you're having a 8 a.m. early dairy meal, then you have flesh a couple of hours later. Maybe in such a case you can also use the same knife as well because it's a designated parv knife. We'll see some type of qualification on that a little bit later. Another thing that you can do, by the way, you could also use, instead of stabbing the ground 10 times in Eitzah, if you don't want to go to your backyard, or if there's a tundra in your backyard, kind of like this time of year, you could actually use a steel wool or Scotch-Brite to scrape down your knife. That would be sufficient as well. Is there a question? Is there a question? Okay. All right. Let's talk about bread leftover. So this is extremely practical. Classic example. Sunday morning, what are you going to do with the leftover challah? So there's a minhag to have French toast. Anybody do this leftover challah? People make French toast? No one eats French toast anymore? Right, okay. So can you use your Shabbos challah? Meaning, I had Shabbos challah, I had challah on Shabbos yesterday, or the Friday night, and what am I going to do? I have all this challah left over. I'm not going to eat challah, I mean, it's like Cody challah Monday or Tuesday, but what am I supposed to do with it? Throw it in the garbage? Have to wait for a dinner? But, I already had my carbohydrates for the week over Shabbos. I can't continue and extend my carbohydrates during the week because those calories really count. What am I going to do with this with the extra bread? All right. Okay, that wasn't funny at all. All right. So here we go. Let's take a look. Any leftover bread, page 100 in the middle, that was used at a meat meal cannot be eaten with milk. Therefore, you cannot make French toast out of your leftover challah from your meat Shabbos meal. The same applies to food eaten by a milk meal. The leftovers may not be eaten with meat. Now, this is very important, and many people hear this halacha and they're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? People need to know this. I was very happy this was quoted. Very important, Rav Moshe Feinstein, who qualifies what bread does this really apply to. Take a look at this. Rav Moshe Feinstein says that this law only applies to bread cut with the intention to eat during the meal. But if part of the loaf is left in the middle uncut, it can be eaten with milk. He says that although it is permitted, one who is strict about any bread that came to the table is doing a good thing. This is certainly true if there are children at the table that may have touched the loaf with their dirty hands. Keep in mind that this is not only pertaining to bread. The same law would apply to salads that have been served with a dirty spoon. If the spoon may have touched meat, put back in the salad, one should not eat the salad at a milk meal. So in terms of challah, what you always try to do is, if you keep the challah in that serving tray and no one's used it, right? Or you only serve it in the beginning when you have your salatim on the table, then you remove the bread. You just put the bread back for benching. Remove the bread. The bread did not come in contact with meat. Or whatever piece of bread were still on the table with meat. Okay, those you don't have your French toast. But the rest, and this happens a lot, sometimes you're left with like a block of the challah, right? A third, a quarter, a half, right? That bread would be allowed to use the next day for French toast. Again, if you want to be machmir, there's no question. There's room to be machmir on it. But Karadin, you definitely would be allowed to use that bread for dairy the next day. Okay, is that clear? Is that clear? Everyone? Okay, good. Let's go on. I want to skip down to page 101 in the middle. That's actually really important. Although the truth is, it's not very practical. I have seen a couple of bakers in Toronto that do this, but it's quite rare. The concept of milchik bread. Have you ever seen people sell dairy bread? Does Grzinski sell dairy bread? They don't sell any bread that's dairy? In the States, you'll see. Mm-hmm. So dairy bread could be problematic because most people assume that bread is parv. So if you're going to bake dairy bread, you must make it look very different. Exactly how you do that, if it's a perfect square. I haven't seen any challah bread that's a perfect square. So maybe, or you put like the cheese at the top, kind of like when they make cheese buns, that kind of have like that cheese sitting on top, and they do blueberry buns, kind of identify what's inside. So if you did that, and you kind of made it known this was dairy bread, that would be permissible. Otherwise, it's a problem with dairy bread because you get confused, which well, so assume bread is parv. That's pretty standard. Okay. Oh, there you go. See, I didn't even know this. In the bottom of page 101, I guess I didn't read this that carefully. In Israel, you see that at the bottom? You may notice there are square barekas and triangular ones. The square ones are made with potato, and the triangular ones are made with cheese. This way no one will make a mistake. They do that in Gruzins? They don't make any dairy, anything at Gruzinski's? They make cheese buns, but the cheese sits at the top, no? No, but I could put sugar. What? There's a sign that says on it dairy. Right, they for sure would have to do that. And how about the top? Like if it wouldn't be there, it'd been another shelf. Is there still cheese that identifies it on the top, or no? Yeah, but that could be on anything, right? Mm-hmm. But a cheese bun, interesting. Okay. Anyways, but I don't think people sell dairy bread in Canada. It's definitely not at a bakery. It's probably not worth it for them to make a milk bread. I would do that at your oven. So it doesn't make sense. Okay, fine. That was the end of lesson 10. Lesson 11 is a fantastic lesson. It is practical daily on a regular basis. I always joke around that religious women have two major phobias. The phobia number one is called the washing phobia. They don't actually want to eat bread. They have to wash and bench. They don't want to do that. Another phobia is they don't like being FINiSHED. They don't like being bisari. The reason is they can't have froyo. They might have ice cream, they have a chocolate bar. Once you're meat, that's it. You kind of like freeze yourself in terms of what you can eat. Those are the two phobias as Jewish women. In Toronto, we have lots of froyo places. That's about it. A couple pizza shops. It's really okay. So the question is, how long do you have to wait? This is a great topic because it has to deal with halacha that seems to be so obvious on one hand, almost black and white, yet if I took a survey in this room, I'm sure it'd be less than black and white in terms of how long people actually wait. And you'll appreciate this a lot more if you understand the reasons behind it. Why do you even wait for milk and meat? Why you wait between meat and milk? And not only that, but people ask this question, what about if you just taste the food? Right? Sometimes you want to taste it while you're cooking. You want to cool it off for your child to feed. If you still have to wait, you not have to wait. So we're going to see there's two major schools of thought in terms of why we wait at all. And then we're going to talk about how long you have to wait. Okay? I hope to do this all today. If not, you might have to pick this up next week. Okay, let's begin. Take a look at page 104 there at the bottom. The Gemara says the following. Rav Chizah said, if a person eats meat, he is not allowed to eat cheese afterwards. But if a person eats cheese, it is permitted for him to then eat meat. Talmud then goes on to say that the father of Mar Ukva would wait from one day until the next day before he would eat any dairy after having meat. But Mar Ukva himself would only wait from meal to meal. In Hebrew, that's from Seuda to Seuda, and the halacha is like Mar Ukva, meaning we need to wait between meal to meal. That is what the halacha says. So the question is, how long is between meal to meal? Right? That's the question. The Kresu Placy, if you take a look there, it's quoted at the top of page 105. Says it's between 1 hour and 6 hours. Why? What's this based on? Whether we start from the time when the food begins to digest, or from the time the food finishes digesting. According to Magen Avram, the food starts to digest after 1 hour and 12 minutes, and it takes 6 hours to completely digest. I have absolutely no idea if that is true from a physical perspective. I do remember one thing. Those of you that recall Mrs. Goodwill from Opana, I had a conversation to her about this. She's a science teacher. And the idea of digesting food, it does take about an hour to digest food. So the idea that, to begin digesting after an hour, I guess perhaps makes sense. The idea that it takes 6 hours to completely digest, I've never heard if that's really true or not. I don't know if anybody here is in nutrition, anybody here is in biology, or I don't know what, chemistry, I don't know what other. I have no idea, I'm not so sure. But nonetheless, at least you appreciate this idea of what exactly does it mean between meal to meal, begin digestion, end of digestion, etc. Here we go. There are the law today. There are many customs today that vary in the amount of time one should wait between meat and milk. The basic guideline is below. Just follow your minhag that you have. You should ask your local rabbi which minhag to follow. The Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch says you should wait 6 hours, and that is the minhag with the Sfaradim. The Rama, Ashkenazim, says the custom in his area was to wait 1 hour, but it's proper to wait 6 hours. The Shach and the Taz, who comment on the Shulchan Aruch, say most Ashkenazim wait 6 hours. The German Jews, Ashkenazim, real Ashkenazim, wait 3 hours. The custom in Holland is to wait 1 hour. According to this custom, there's a machloket, there's a disagreement. The Shach holds that according to those who wait 1 hour, a kinuach, meaning wiping, which is accomplished for a purpose by eating and chewy food, and hadacha, literally rinsing, which is accomplished for a purpose by drinking, is not necessary. However, the Taz holds that according to those who hold 1 hour is enough, then chewing food and drinking must be done in between. Meaning, the most lenient opinion, which holds 1 hour between meat and milk, there's an argument. Some say after an hour, do whatever you want. Others say no, requires cleaning out your mouth. Meaning, eating an apple, having some water, bread, water, something that's going to clean out your mouth, both food and a liquid. The Mishnah Zav decides that one should do like the Taz whenever possible, which is more machmir. Okay. You might have heard another minhag, and that is to wait 5.5 hours, or 5 and a bit. Where does that come from at all? The Yalkut Yosef, who is Rav Avadia Yosef, the great posek in the Sephardic world, says that there's reason to believe that the Mechaber in the Shulchan Aruch did not mean exactly 6, because in the Mechaber's time, watches were not common. It was very hard there to be exact. Meaning, today we know 6 hours, that's easy. We know 6 hours to the millionth of a second practically. But in those days, they don't know, what's 6 hours, right? Yeah, approximately, they don't know exactly 6 hours. Accordingly, there are those that say you don't have to wait a full 6 hours. Some commentaries say the Mechaber even holds that 5.5 hours is sufficient. This has been said the name over in the name of Ron Cutler. And the Badai, a Shulchan holds that the law is to wait 6 complete hours. You shouldn't do partial. Dr. Yosef adds it is like the Mechaber would hold that in our day, maybe, where you can calculate 6 hours, you should wait 6 hours. No question, there is a leniency. If that is indeed the person's custom, you can wait 5.5 hours. What about if you don't remember? I don't remember when I finished eating. Right? Did I finish it? Yeah.
Where did German trade?
That's a very good question. There's you saw about Holland one. So the Rama, remember what the Rama wrote? Right? Wait 1 hour, but you should wait 6. So it appears in Germany they kind of wanted to find perhaps a middle ground. There's a lot has been written on how long to wait, because it's not just a great question of halacha, but it's a great question in terms of establishing minhagim. Meaning the custom of different cities, communities, mixed communities. So there's a lot of research that's been done on 3 hours. If you want, I can show you a few articles that have been written exactly to trace where that came from. There's even a lot of scholarly work written on this, because it's a fascinating topic just from a historical perspective, about how customs began and how customs changed and how people went back and fought over these customs. But that's exactly, I don't remember exactly how it traced on the council, but that was the... Okay. What about if you're not sure? I don't remember, did I finish eating? Let's assume I wait 6 hours. I don't remember, did I finish at 2? Did I finish at 2:30? Do we have to be strict, or can we be lenient? So the answer is, there's definitely room to be lenient, and the reason is the following. Maybe it really is, it's already 8 o'clock. So I finished eating at 2. Now it's 8 o'clock. So maybe I did finish at 2. Or Maybe you don't have to wait 6 hours. Maybe you don't have to wait 5.5 hours. Maybe you have to wait 1 hour. Maybe you have to wait 5 hours. So therefore, if it's at 8 o'clock, I don't remember if I finish eating at 2 or 2:30, you'd be allowed to eat. You'd be allowed to eat your froyo on the Motzei Shabbos. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. You're saying what? If I don't know if it's 2.5. On one hand, you could argue yes, because maybe it's only an hour that you really have to wait. Right? If you only wait 3 hours and you've already, it's already been 2.5 hours. Yeah. I think so. Let me double check. But my gut reaction is to say, maybe you don't have to wait an hour. Right? So. Okay. Here we go. Let's do the following scenario, and this is a great topic, also very practical, I'm sure, for many of you. Why do we wait 6 hours? Meaning, why do we wait at all, I should really say, between eating meat and then dairy? Why do we wait at all? What's the rationale behind it? And to understand the rationale is going to be very important in the following scenario. It's Friday afternoon. I want to taste the chicken soup. I want to taste the chicken. I want to taste the meat. But I don't swallow it. So I taste it in my mouth and I spit it out. Do I still have to wait? Am I now fleishik? In which case, I can't have a pre-Shabbos coffee, or not with milk, right? So, does it render me fleishik? Or, I want to cool off food for my child, and there's hot chicken. There's hot chicken soup. So a great way to cool it down is to put it in your mouth, right? So, by doing this, have you now made yourself fleishik? So this will depend on why we wait between meat and milk. Page 107, let's begin. The Rambam and Rashi. According to the Rambam, page 107, the reason why a person must wait 6 hours between meat and milk is because some meat may still be caught between one's teeth. What's called basar bein hashinayim. The source that meat between the teeth is still called meat, is the pasuk in the Torah, and the meat was still between their teeth. Habasar odenu ben shinehem. This is a pasuk in Parshas Baloscha, right around the time they ate the slav. Right? The Torah describes they ate the slav, and it says that while they ate this quail, while they ate the slav, which, by the way, it's probably actually not a great translation, but whatever, we use the word quail for slav for now, the meat was still in their teeth. Oh, we see from here that what? Even when it's in your teeth, the Torah still calls it meat. If the Torah still calls it meat, that must be that we're worried that there's still meat in your mouth. We have to wait for that meat to dissipate. How long does it dissipate? Okay, that's for the number of hours. So since it's defined as meat, even though it is in your mouth, stuck between your teeth, you still have to be concerned. According to Rashi, the reason why we wait is because meat continues to give taste. It's called moshech ta'am. So the food finishes digesting. It gives an aftertaste in one's mouth. We know that the saliva is still working. For the human body to break down the meat, it takes time. There's some type of taste, there's some type of digestion that's taking place, and there's still something going on in a person's mouth, a person's saliva, and therefore you need to wait X amount of hours in order for this process to end. What's the fancy term nafka mina? What's a practical difference between the two of them? Here we go. This is for the advanced kosher kitchen. 7 differences between the two explanations. 1, chewing the food for a child. So let's play a game. Don't look down. Don't look down. And you tell me, ladies, according to the Rambam, if you chew food for the child, should you have to wait 6 hours? Yes or no? According to the Rambam, what's the reason why you wait? Because stuck in your teeth. According to Rashi, it's because of digestion. So if all you're doing is putting this in your mouth, what would the Rambam say? Yeah. You still have to wait. Why? Because it was in your, it was in your mouth, right? You chewed. You broke down the food for your child. But according to Rashi, would you have to wait? No, because there was no digestion. Right? Your saliva might potentially start breaking it down, but at the end of the day, there wasn't digestion that I guess would build it back up and build it back up into your mouth because you didn't swallow. Okay. Turn the page. Yeah, question?
Would that mean that if you had something like chicken soup that had no actual pieces of chicken in it, and you put it in your mouth and spit it out, but there was no like meat?
That would be. Hold on. Yeah, good. Potentially, yes. Potentially. When we get to the practical halacha, you'll be maybe disappointed, maybe not. I will say, if meat was found between the teeth after 6 hours. So after 6 hours, I still have meat in my mouth. It's been 6 hours. It's been 12 hours. It's been 24 hours. The Rambam, it doesn't need to be removed because it's considered a waste product. According to Rashi, you'd have to remove it. Because, according to Rashi, if there's still meat there, then there's still some type of digestion that has to be taking place.
Do you need to wait again?
Maybe, perhaps not. Perhaps not. 3. Swallowing the meat without chewing it. Let's say I have chicken soup, and what do I do with the chicken soup? I'm not chewing it. I take the chicken soup and I just slurp it down. Right? That'd be an example of it. Ariel was saying. The Rambam. 1 is allowed to eat dairy immediately afterwards. According to Rashi, you gotta wait 6 hours because there's digestion that's taking place. 4, eating fat. 1 is allowed to eat dairy afterwards to the Rambam. Why? Because, same idea, there's no chewing. It's going right down. Yummy. According to Rashi, you have to wait 6 hours. Now, hard cheese. We're going to have to come back to this hard cheese idea. Actually, take a look at this footnote for a minute. 18. So it's called mutalas. It's called this wormy cheese. It is made with bacteria like Swiss cheese. It is aged for 6 months. If it is not aged for 6 months but is hard, it's questionable. It is considered like real hard cheese according to halacha to wait 6 hours. Believe it or not, the halacha is if you eat hard cheese, you need to wait 6 hours till you can eat meat. We're going to return to this because it's going to have major ramification for eating pizza. Okay, we'll talk about that. You have to wait 6 hours after eating pizza. Here we go, back to source 5. According to the Rambam, it is not necessary to wait 6 hours before eating meat. The reason for this is that the Torah describes this concept only by meat that will be caught between the teeth. Habasar odenu med ben shinehem. It is never mentioned regarding cheese, and therefore it doesn't apply. The Rambam says you eat hard cheese, you don't need to wait for meat. The only time you have to wait 6 hours is if you eat meat. Rashi says no. Maybe there's this concept of lingering taste even when it comes to cheese. And therefore, you'd have to wait 6 hours. Another practical distinction between the two of them, dentures. Rambam. It is sufficient just to change one dentures before eating the opposite type of food. Because, think about this, ladies. If it's all about your teeth, then you don't have teeth. You just remove your teeth, and you could have dairy right after, because your food cannot be stuck in teeth if you've removed your teeth. That's pretty crazy. Again, has other issues, but Rashi says changing one dentures after eating meat and before eating dairy is insufficient. There's still lingering taste that is going on. Flossing. According to the Rabbi, this is unbelievable. After eating meat, one may first do a thorough flossing and rinsing one's mouth, and you'd be allowed to have dairy. According to Rashi, you'd have to wait 6 hours. However, according to the Rashal, even the Rambam doesn't rely on flossing because maybe we didn't floss so well. Ladies, hate to break it to you. What is the halacha? The laws that we follow, the stricter of the two opinions, both the Rambam and Rashi in each case. Therefore, in all those 7 cases, we'll take the most stringent approach of either opinion. So therefore, dentures doesn't matter, flossing is not going to matter, swallowing is not going to matter, fat isn't going to matter, hard cheese we still have to be concerned about, swallowing without chewing, still finding meat in your teeth, you should really remove it. Was the first one? And chewing for a child. All those things you do become fleshik. Okay? It appears that we want to give deference to both of these opinions. What's interesting is that this is complicated. Generally speaking, why don't we just say, I'm not Sephardi, why should I hold like the Rambam? Right? I can hold like Rashi. And you could argue that if you're Sephardi, I necessarily hold like Rashi, hold like the Rambam. That, although that is sometimes the case, it appears that since the Gemara itself could be interpreted either way, and it's just unclear, we are going to take the opinion of both of them. And that has been accepted already for hundreds of years, that is to take the strict approach on both of them, most probably because there isn't anything that crystal clear in the Talmud. If there's something a little bit more clear in the Gemara on the Talmud, maybe you could argue, no, we don't have to take the strict opinions of both. Or perhaps one could say, because I'll tell you why. Maybe from a practical perspective, they're actually both true. Meaning, you do have this digestion issue, and you do have this stuck in the teeth issue. I'm saying from a practical, real perspective, what actually is mitzias, what actually is a situation out there is that both are in fact right. That could be another reason. Very good question. We don't always do that. You're right when it comes to halacha. Okay. I already done Marv, so we have a little bit more time, and I wanted to, if we can just do this, I'd be very, very happy. Okay, let's talk about hard cheese. I don't know how many of you, let's talk about actually two things. Let's talk about eating milk. No, let's talk about eating meat after milk. How long do you have to wait? And then I also want to talk about hard cheese. If I took a survey, I would say most of you have heard this. Ever heard this hour? You got to wait an hour? Where's that come from? There's no source in the Gemara to wait an hour between between milk and meat. None whatsoever. So where we get this from? It actually comes from the Zohar. It says you should wait an hour between the two. Perhaps maybe half hour, but it's unclear because the Zohar could even be understood. You only need to wait an hour between meat and milk. So really, all you need to do today, you could wait an hour, then you don't have to wait an hour, but if you really, really wanted to, you need to clean your mouth out very well. How do you clean your mouth out very well? If you had an apple is tough, right? If you had some dairy residue in your mouth, chewing an apple would clean that out. You drink some juice, water might not be the best thing, because water might, but have some, eat some apple, have some bread. If you eat, maybe rinse your mouth out afterwards, you'd be allowed to have meat basically right away. Wash your hands. Wash your hands as well, in case you had some dairy residue on your hands. If you've done those things, you clean your mouth out. What's called hadacha and shtifa. You've cleaned your mouth out and rinsed your mouth out. It'd be sufficient, and wash your hands. You'd be allowed to have meat right afterwards. Okay. Now you'd have to make a bracha achrona, meaning you have to bench. You're not allowed to have one bracha achrona, one after bracha. Is going to cover a meal that included both meat and milk in it. That you're not allowed to do. So if you'd have a milk product, even if you've washed your own stuff, you couldn't then rely on your shahakal that you made on your cheese to include also your chicken. That you're not allowed to do. You have to make a bracha achrona, wash your hands, clean your mouth out, then you have to make another bracha on that other food. Okay, so if you know you're going to do that, maybe you should walk around the corner. All right, there's other hilchah bracha issues they have to deal with, but from a basar v'challah perspective, you'd be okay. You have a question? Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about for a minute about hard cheese, because the Ramah clearly says in the Shulchan Aruch, we're going to go for another about 10 minutes or so. That's okay. The Shulchan Aruch clearly says that we have to be strict by hard cheese. Bottom of page 109. What is the definition of hard cheese? Will be very important. It says it has to be 6 months old, or this wormy culture bacteria that gives the cheese a very pungent taste. The Shach only mentions 6 months. Unless the label states otherwise, most of today's hard cheeses do not fit into this category since they were not aged for 6 months. I don't know if any of you is a real cheese connoisseur. You can get these cheeses that are like special hard Swiss cheese. Some of those very fancy, inexpensive cheeses have been hardened for 6 months, and you might actually have to wait 6 hours till you eat meat. Personally, I actually can't stand that stuff. but just, I don't know if everyone likes cheese. No? Yeah, you're a cheese person?
Parmesan cheese.
Yeah. Parmesan cheese, I don't believe it's been aged 6 months. Yeah, some people like to say it has, but it hasn't been. It hasn't been. You need a real special cheese for aged 6 months. In America, I don't believe that any cheese is aged 6 months. There is an opinion, and this might be maybe what you're referring to, that because of the chemicals we add today, it makes it as potent as the cheese was aged 6 months. Generally speaking, outside of Israel, we're more lenient. There are those in Eretz Yisrael who are more strict, more machmir. There's going to be another way to be lenient, which I believe will make everyone mako in a certain area. And that is the following. So, even if we want to argue on page 110 in the middle there, the basic law is to wait 6 hours between hard cheese and meat. Real hard cheese has cheese aged 6 months. Even if American processed cheese is considered hard cheese, right, then the Darchi Tshuva, who brings in the name of the Yad Yehuda, that if it is cooked, it loses the attributes of hard cheese, and it's as if it is soft cheese. Therefore, even if your minhag is to wait 6 hours for the American processed cheese, even if it wasn't 6 months, you can be lenient if you had pizza. Why? Since the cheese chances are it wasn't aged 6 months, and it was cooked. And if it's cooked, it becomes soft. It for sure doesn't become hard cheese. If it was for sure aged 6 months, you really need to be strict. And if you want to be machmir, even on regular cheese, because with the chemical composition, if you've cooked it, if you've heated it up, for sure there's no reason to be strict. If you want to sprinkle, Parmesan cheese on something, okay, maybe there's room to be more. But I think that's when they cook it. No, you have just regular Parmesan cheese that's not cooked. Maybe in a salad, I guess. There's so little cheese, right? So definitely room to be lenient there as well. Okay, let's stop here on the top of page 111, and we'll pick it up. There's not that much more to do in this lesson. Hopefully we can continue the next lesson next week. I have a wedding next week, but it's at the Beit, so I will come down at 9 o'clock. So, all right, have a good night, everybody. Have a good week. Thank you.